everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Royal One podcast, the podcast that empowers you to discover your purpose, embrace identity, and engage faith tenaciously. I'm your host, Dr. Lysandra Barnes, life coach, Bible teacher, author, and founder of Royal One Enterprise. I am so excited to be with you, and I hope you are all having a wonderful day. With October being recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I want to dedicate the next episode to discussing my story on how to overcome abusive relationships and also how to support a person involved in an abusive relationship with my best friend, clinical therapist Tiyanna Payne. So, are you all ready to go on a journey of empowerment? Then let's go. It was fall 2006 when I found myself in a position that I assumed all too often, which was on the floor in my apartment being abused by my boyfriend. Now, I had just met him maybe a few weeks prior to our very first altercation. I met him at church. He was one of those redeemed bad boys. They said that he was a part of a gang at one point in time. So I was young and I was interested in the bad boy type. The fact that he now found the Lord, it was perfect. Like, he loved Jesus and he could fight. That was the best combination, right? I never thought that he would turn that disrespect towards me. But of course, if you're disrespecting everyone else, you're going to disrespect me as well. And it happened. It started off with these negative comments and belittling statements and things like that. And, you blow it off or brush it off like, whatever, leave me alone. And then it started to escalate. I couldn't walk in front of him because he felt like I was disrespectful to him. And actually, that was my first encounter with the abuse, is that I did walk in front of him. I remember him pulling my arm so hard, like it almost fell out of the socket. And he said that I was disrespectful to him. And of course, at that time, I had never had anything like that happen to me. And I was standing my ground like, don't you dare put your hands on me like that. Little did I know that once I got into my apartment that he would show me otherwise. I was afraid because I had never been in that situation before. And when he hit me, it triggered the insecurities that I had. And I was so afraid that I tried to fight him off, but I couldn't. Weeks would go and we would have these same events. He would apologize after it would happen, say that he was sorry, say that he had a lot going on. He would, give me flowers and try and be a better guy. And it got to the point where I began to distance myself from my friends and family. I started missing class because I was bruised head to toe. I was so full of shame and guilt because I knew I deserved more than that. And I knew, that I deserved better, but I couldn't get past the fact that I allowed myself in such a bad situation. I was afraid to tell anybody. I had this persona that I didn't take any mess. If someone said something smart to me, I would tell you off to hold my ground. But it's like, so if I told them I was being beat up, they wouldn't believe me. So I was just dealing with a lot of shame. And in that relationship, I experienced a ton of things. I'm going to spare you a lot of the details because I don't want to trigger anybody who may have been involved in domestic violence. But I will say that the types of abuse that I shared in the prior episode, so there was some sexual abuse, there was verbal abuse, there was physical abuse, there was psychological and emotional abuse happening. There was even some spiritual abuse and property abuse that took place in that time. I lost myself in him. I felt like the best thing for me to do was to appease his needs because he said the things that he didn't like. And in order for him to stop being mean, maybe if I turned into the woman that he wanted, he would finally appreciate me. And the thing about it was that he was horrible. He was manipulative. He was very manipulative. And the times when I wanted to leave, he would just cry and give me this sob story about his life. It came to a point where my best friend, Tia, she noticed the change in me. I got to a place where I couldn't be around men by myself. I was afraid. I wore this fleece jacket zipped to the top to hide my bruises. I just lost myself. I was not confident anymore. I couldn't look. I lost a lot of weight. It was just really bad. And I remember my best friend stopping by in the middle of a fight that we had. She looked at me and she told me, "You're worth more than this. And when you're ready to go, you'll leave. But you know that you're on the clock. Like, you better tell your parents or I am." At that point, I needed someone to encourage me. Now, did I get out of the relationship right away? No, I didn't. I thought I could fix him. I wanted to prove to myself that I could have a relationship. So, maybe if I just show him what love is, maybe if I dress right or do everything he says for me to do, it'll be fine. But it was to the point where he moved into my apartment. I had to have food cooked at a certain time. I had to do everything he said. If not, there would be an abusive episode. Honestly, he tried to kill me a few times, and I remember him saying that he was going to kill me, and he left. And that night I knew I was dying. I felt it in my bones. I knew I was dying that next day. And I remember getting on my prayer rug, just praying and crying out to the Lord. I was reading every scripture I could find on, long life and salvation and on help and deliverance that I could think of. And I remember calling my family and telling them that I loved them. I was still too afraid to tell them what was going on because he had told me that if I told my family, he would kill them too. So I was just feeling like I would just sacrifice myself for the sake of my family. But that's when I realized that he never had my best interest at heart. I knew that I have to get out of this situation, because my fear turned into hate. I was at a point of no return. I had to make a decision, and I no longer wanted to be this battered and broken woman anymore. And I remember praying, asking God to make a way for me. And lo and behold, he did. My sister had a feeling something wasn't right, and she called my mom, and my mom came up to visit, and she realized that I just wasn't in a good space. And she asked me about my boyfriend at the time, and I told her that I hated him. And at that point, my mom realized that it was time for her to step in. She still didn't know what was going on, but she knew something wasn't right. And she said two things to me that I'll never forget. She said, love should never hurt. And if you are afraid in your own house, something is wrong. My mom, she stayed with me for a week. She was praying over me and loving on me in a way that was no shame or no guilt. It was what I needed to get the strength to finally decide to leave that relationship. And at that time, I said, Lord, you got to get me out of this. Give me the courage to stand up for myself, to get an exit strategy together. And I did. And I was able to get free of that relationship. And although I was free of it physically, I wasn't free mentally. Then I had to go through a process of self-discovery to really begin to rid myself of the harm that was done. So we talk about abuse and we say that physical abuse leaves an outward scar. Well, the emotional abuse inflicts an inward scar. So I had to go on a journey to heal that inward scar that was on the inside of me. I moved away for 12 years. And during that time, I was gone to Portland. God did some major work in my life. I have more of the story of my healing journey, even more of an extensive account of the journey that I've taken with the abuse in my book, Rejected to Accept It, Learning to Love Myself After Adversity. Rejected to Accept It is an empowering guide to wholeheartedness. This book explores the personal triumphs and struggles I faced while embarking on my self-discovery journey after experiencing fatherlessness, domestic violence, and a series of failed and unhealthy relationships. More than a memoir, Rejected to Accept It empowers the reader to overcome the crippling effects of rejection and domestic violence. You learn how to love yourself and others the way God intended, and you can create healthy patterns for future relationships. This book provides hope and inspiration. Maybe you have personal experiences that left you feeling heartbroken or questioning your worth. Rejected to Accept It will encourage you to allow Jesus to repair the shattered pieces of your heart with the glue of his love. Rejected to Accept It is available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com in both paperback and ebook formats. Domestic violence is not okay. If you or someone you know is involved in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Please call 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233, or go to their website, www.thehotline.org, for more information. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I am so excited. I have a special guest with me today, my best friend, Tiyanna Payne. She is a therapist, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with her. As you guys have already heard, you've heard my story and everything that I've gone through, and you know how I gave my best friend, Tia, a shout out. So here we go. We have her live with us right now. Hey, Tia, how's it going?
It is going good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really, really good. I'm so excited to have you on the show. This is not just for this conversation, but this is actually a dream brought into reality because the whole idea of me starting a podcast started with you. Like, isn't that crazy?
And can I just say, I'm honored and I'm so happy that this happened. This was one of our crazy, Sandra and T conversations that now, the dream that became a reality. So I'm excited. Y'all can't see me, but if you could see I'm smiling real big because I'm so excited.
Look, let me tell you, me and Tia go way back, like 20 years back.
Is it
20? About 20 years? Look, about 20 years. So here's the thing. I would get us into some very peculiar situations. It was me.
Yes.
And Tia she was with me. She rolled with me the whole time. I mean, T.
Well.
And we laughing because we're going back through situations where we're like, okay, Steak and Shake. Applebee's. Just saying. Just to name a few of the things. Snoopy.
Oh.
So let me tell you, T is ride or die. So we hear that all the time. We call ourselves salt and pepper. She's like, I'm dark. We're the perfect combination. And so she has been there with me through the ups and downs, the goods and bads. There's a lot of people that you can't say that you're not only your best friend, but your sister. During the time of my life when I went through the worst thing of my entire life, she was right there. T, you know the story, right? And now she's a therapist. So we're going to be having a conversation, jumping from our past to our present. This is more like girls talk. So I want y'all to just sit into a conversation of what we're talking about as sisters. All right, let's go. So T, what was your initial thought when you found out that I was in an abusive relationship?
I think it's tough as a friend because I think as friends, we know each other's insecurities and we try to strengthen each other in those insecurities to make yourself more secure. I remember getting a phone call from you and you telling me about this guy. And probably the first 2-3 phone calls, I'm like, okay, he seems nice. And I know my friend and I love my friend. I love my sister. She loves love.
I do.
And she loves falling in love. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, we just got to try to go a little slow.
Because I go fast. Like, yes. Look, I have, even now, let me tell you, I have learned my last lesson. Another one, T, right? I have learned my lesson on moving fast. Okay, slow is the way. What did India Ari say? Slow down, baby. You moving too fast.
Way too fast.
You got your hands in the air and your feet on the gas. Mm-hmm. You trying to wreck your future, running from your past. You need to slow down. I have finally understood.
Yes.
But keep going.
So I think for me, I was kind of like, I'm going to be here for my friend. And I think one of the things we need to say that's interesting is we went to the same college, grew up in the same town, left and ended up going to the same college. But we always laugh because we hung out with different people in college. But we always, we always caught up with each other every week about what's going on in life. We made sure we had like a dinner night at least once a month. And then when we came home, we were inseparable. So it was always weird, but it just worked for us, so it was one of the catch-ups, and you're telling me. And I remember it was probably like our third or fourth conversation about the relationship. I remember you telling me that he bit you.
Yep. Yes. Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yes. I remember going, he did what? And you said it again. And I was like, yeah, I don't like that. And don't do that. Mm-hmm. And you were like, oh, it's not a big deal. At this time, I think I was still in undergrad.
Yeah.
First, I think this might have been my senior year of college. And I'm kind of like, I don't really care for that. And I don't like her dealing with that. But it's my friend and I'm going to support her. I'm going to let her know I'm not comfortable with that. And I don't want her doing that. And don't be bruising your pretty brown skin because I'm not cool with that. Like we're like, come on, Black Girl Magic. This is before Black Girl Magic was a thing. But that's one of the things for me that I vividly remember. That for me rang a bell of something's not right. Mm-hmm. I made a mental note to myself, and I didn't tell her. And Sandra knows me. There's a lot of times people get ultimatums. There's mental notes I make that I never verbalize to anybody. But in my head, I said, I got to check on her more often. And I now want to lay eyes on her more often, because once a month is not enough. And I didn't like it, because for me, I was like, what is going on? And so I think that was my first introduction. I felt uncomfortable for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And as you said in the beginning, we done been through some crazy situations that, you know, we probably can't never tell our parents in life.
Ever.
Don't ever tell our parents, but I never was uncomfortable. I was always in situations where I'm like, okay, how are we gonna get out?
We got it.
I was usually the one, because I drove mostly.
He drove.
Old Faithful.
Old Faithful got us through, okay?
And I'm like, well, we gonna do this, and we gonna get through this, and we gonna get out. Like, we gonna be good, we gonna get out. You know, that's usually, I was that friend that we get out of here somehow, and I'm gonna find this as an escape route. In my mind, I was like, I need to figure out her as an escape route. You know, like that was my thinking, is I need to keep eyes on her, and I need to come up with an escape plan.
So I remember starting to give you coded language. I start pulling back. I didn't want to hang out as much. I was like, oh, everything is cool. And I remember the day it was a surprise drive-by. We have been through so much that you know me so well. So if I don't go to class, if I'm not at work, if I'm not at church, right? And I'm giving you excuses and the runaround, and I can't give you a straight answer, that puts antennas up. Let's go back to the day that you came over. Y'all, it's about to be real up in here today.
I'm trying to figure out how to say this appropriately. I say for me, she was ducking and dodging me. Mm-hmm. And we all have that friend. Yep, we have friends to this day that you may not talk to for days and months or whatever, or years, but you pick up like you never left. We were in the same city. We were less than a 15-minute drive from each other. And like I said, we talked on a weekly basis. We went out to dinner at least, once a month. We did something. We went shopping. We did it lit Ruby Tuesdays in Chinese, because it was like
look.
Sandra stopped answering my calls.
Mm-hmm.
You would answer my calls like every 2.5, 3 weeks. Now, granted, I think this went long longer than, I'm going to be honest, that I was comfortable. Like, when I think about this in my head, I do sometimes say, you could have intervened way earlier. And I know that's not fully on me. I know that now, but there is still that part of me that goes, you should have intervened way earlier. But I had just started grad school.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's what it was. It was grad school.
Yeah. And I was in my own crazy relationship.
Mm-hmm. Right.
At that time. And, I think it was one of those things where I was like, okay, we kind of both live in life, and I'm learning, I'm grad school, and I was working and trying to do an internship. So I think I was like, okay, I haven't talked to her in 2-3 weeks. Okay, she canceled this month's thing, but it was the second month.
Yep.
It was the second month for me where I'm like, and that's when I think I paused and I said, I'm just going over there.
No call.
I just went over there.
Drop by.
And I don't know what I was thinking, but this is when I'm ride or die for my friends and people I love, they know that. And so I remember coming to your apartment and banging on your door. Like, when they say police knock, I was police knocking on purpose. And to the point, I remember your neighbors opening and telling me, she's not in there. Like, stop knocking. And I was like, she's in there. And I didn't hear anything. I felt it. I felt it. And I was like, she is in there. I just remember knocking and like beating the door. And I'm pretty sure I got on his nerves and he finally opened the door.
He did.
And I remember he didn't want to let me in. It was that. It was like
in mid-fight at that point. Mid-fight.
Yeah, it was like, it reminds me of the movies where they talk, the person kind of opens the door and peek out a little bit, like, what you want, they ain't here, whatever. And I remember him saying, like, she's busy, she can't talk right now. And I was like, I'm not taking that as an answer. Like, I was not okay with that. I wasn't feeling that, and that wasn't going to happen. And to know both of us, Sandra and I both were 5 foot nothing.
Right. Look, swear we 6'3".
Yeah,
swear we
5 foot nothing. But in my mind, I was like, I'm getting in here. And I remember pushing my way through that door.
She did.
With this big old man. But in my mind, I'm bigger than you today. Because my sister's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting his face.
You did.
I remember yelling and cussing and calling him everything but a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew. Without her telling me, I knew. You know what I mean? You didn't say anything besides the coded language, enough where I knew, though, something's not right. And honestly, it's still to this day where I kind of go, he could have really hurt me.
Yeah.
He could have did a whole lot. But in that moment, I didn't care because your safety and your life was more important. And I knew in my mind, I said, I always tell Sandra, she's Jesus' right-hand man.
Yep.
And I don't tell her for years. And in my head, I said, if this Jesus' right-hand man, and I'm in here fighting for Jesus' right-hand man, Jesus on my side too. So this is what's going to happen. And I remember him walking out and leaving. I mean, it's still, adrenaline rushing and all of that. But I remember your face.
Yep.
And I don't think I've ever said this to you. That was the most broken I've ever seen you.
Look, y'all, we might have some tears rolling because I'm trying to hold it together now. I'm trying to hold it together.
It was the most broken that I saw you. I was like, she doesn't know who she is. And she doesn't know her worth. I knew that. You know what I mean? Like, I remember feeling that and feeling helpless. I can't get her out of the situation. And I knew, and here's the thing, I knew I couldn't because you weren't ready. And I knew I couldn't force you. And so even though inside of me was like, come home with me, I'll protect you. I don't know how I'm going to protect you, but I'm going to protect you. I knew that wasn't the conversation you needed to have in that moment. I'm going to use a term I use now in therapy, but I say you needed somebody to feed you and feed who you were in your soul. And so that's what I knew my job was that day, to save you, because I don't know what would have happened. We say, I don't know why I went over there. We know why I went over there. We know that's exactly what it was, where I knew I had to. I think I actually skipped a class because it just didn't feel right. I remember pulling up to my class. You know, this is grad school. You can't miss class because it's only 1 week.
No games in grad school.
It didn't feel right. And something said, you this close to Sandra's house, go over there. And I was like, I have to lay eyes on her. And I have to lay eyes on her today. And it just, I remember that look.
And the thing about it is that when you said you're worth more than this, you are worth more than this. I'm not going to tell you to leave. I will never forget these words. I am not going to tell you to leave. You will leave when you get ready. But I will tell you, you own the clock.
No, that was true.
Now here's the thing. She was like, you better tell your mom or I'm going to tell your family. Like, either somebody going to tell them. But I'm telling you that this is not okay. And then you left.
Yeah.
And that is what I was left with. So I go get in the shower to pull myself together and I saw myself broken. And that's when I was like, I got to get out of this. But I didn't know how because of the shame of being take no mess Sandra. Tough, strong, bold, big personality, loves the Lord. I'm not doing nothing. I'll cuss you off the drop of a dime. Everybody who knows me knows back then. I'm redeemed now, but.
Yeah, you had a couple moments where you shocked me.
What would Jesus do?
Yes.
He had X, Y, and Z, 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
But I'm redeemed now.
Yeah.
But that right. But that girl was being abused.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell nobody because I'm like, what would they say? But I don't know how to get out of this because this dude is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He is a man of his word. He has done the most horrible things to me, and I am scared. I'm scared. Like he done moved in my place and don't pay a lick of the rent. I can't get away from this. I don't know what else to do, but I'm so grateful that God sent you when he did, because it was the reminder, like, you worth more than this. Like, you have never been treated like this before. This is the one time I've been treated like this. Prior to that and after that, like, I've never been treated like that before. So it was like as a reminder to say, you're worth more than this. So even though the relationship lasted a little longer, I was always reminded, you're worth more than that. Now that you are a therapist, what would you tell somebody that says, my best friend is going through this? What do I do?
I would say, one, know your friend's patterns, right? Because you got to be able to detect it. You didn't tell me. You gave me coded language. I mean, the closest thing you said to me was, he bit you. And I think that was, for me, was like,
We don't do that. Where they do that at? Like, not here.
Did he break skin? Like, wait a minute. I know your patterns, right? So I say, listen to the words unsaid, because that's what it is. You know, our conversations became different. They became coded. They became very distant, very surface. You pushed off of you and onto me constantly. Always have had in our friendship is equal. You know what I mean? Now, it might be a conversation where it's 60-40 one day, but then it's going to flip the next. But it was always about me and never about you, no matter how I redirected that conversation. So I would say, like, listen to those nonverbal cues, watch for those things. I think the other two is support. Don't say things of, you got to get out and you got to do this, because they got to be ready. Have to be mentally and emotionally ready. And the biggest one is emotionally. You know, in your heart of hearts, I got to go. I got to go, and I need to get out of this situation. But trauma attracts trauma. You got to deal with that trauma at that baseline level. Feed into that person. I think I started remember sending you texts just because we do it anyway. I would just be like, thinking about you. I love you, sis. How you doing? And I probably got to a nuisance where I'm like, you're going to answer me, and I'm going to keep texting you. One, because I think at that point you knew I'm gonna pop up.
She gonna keep coming. So I gotta.
I think I popped up again after that. Like, and it was funny because he was there, and I remember knocking on that door, and he opening that door, and he seen me. He didn't say anything to me. He got his coat and left. I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to love on you. And now I threaten you. Be honest. I don't necessarily recommend that, but in that situation, because I knew you and your family dynamic. Yeah. And also the me and your family dynamic. You guys have to understand, I call her mom my mom. You know, her brothers and sisters are my brothers and sisters. Yeah. I remember getting into it with my parents over a Christmas holiday.
And stayed right at my house.
You know, and I stayed for like 3 weeks. I was there. Like,
so did.
I'm family. Like, her whole family knows me. My whole family knows her. I couldn't face your family.
Because they didn't know.
But knowing that I'm family too, and I did nothing.
Yeah.
Or I knew and I didn't tell them. I mean, if you want to be technical, we didn't tell them till
later.
But I think even telling Wayne, I remember when he found out, because we messed up.
Oh yeah, we was at the house having that conversation,
and it was 5 years ago because I was engaged.
Yep.
And me and you casually talking about it now because we didn't dealt with it.
Right.
We talking about it, and I remember seeing his face, and he looked at you, and then he looked at me, and then he go back to you, and then he go back to me, and I'm like, we both kind of went,
oh boy.
But if you know Sandra, and if you read her book, you know she's such a God-fearing woman and comes from such a praying family, such a loving family, that there's no way in the world they would have knew that was going on and not done something about it. I knew in that moment, like, I'm going to say what I got to say, but at the same time, I'm not facing your mom. If your mom called me or your brother calls me and says, is something going on with Sandra? I got to be honest.
Yep. Because I'll never forget the day that, and I said this already, that he was going to kill me. Like he said that he told me the day before, I'm sick of this. Tomorrow you will be murdered. Tomorrow you are dying. And he left my apartment and I was so scared. And I just called on the name of the Lord, like literally all night. Cause I knew the next day I was going to be dead. But I called my family and my friends and I just told them I loved them. Didn't say why. Had the opportunity to spill the beans and say, okay, this was really happening, but I still didn't because I thought I was saving them, which is crazy. And it's not crazy. It's the mindset that you're in that moment, because my identity was so lost in him that he was, again, a man of his word. So if he said, he already told me that if I told my sister, my brother, my mom, he was going to kill him. He already knew where I lived. He already knew where everybody lived. So I was not going to put my family in danger. I was willing to take it because I got myself in a situation. Then I got to figure out how to get myself out. So I was like, okay, Lord, either you're going to have to come through or I'm coming to the glorified gate. But yeah. I read every scripture I could find on life and protection. And that next day, his friend came. The Lord helped me talk my way out of it. But after that, I came over to tears like, I got to figure out a way to get out of this. Then after I finally got out of the relationship, crazy stuff kept happening. It's like to stay in my house. Like I couldn't do it anymore. Like what was that moment like for you when you was like, come stay with me for a while, like just to clear the air?
You know, I'll be honest. I didn't think it was over for a while.
Really?
We always joke and we always say, don't go back to Egypt.
Don't go back to Egypt. Oh, look, I'm about to preach that.
For every relationship, don't go back to Egypt. We went back to Egypt. A lot.
Back to Egypt.
Right? Because we wear our heart on our sleeves and we give ever 100% and we want to give 15,000 chances. So I didn't think it was over. I didn't think it was over. Transparency. Mm-hmm. Till you left Michigan.
Really?
Till you left Michigan. I was like, he's going to call. And I remember I did not want you to go.
Mm-hmm. You were adamant about that.
And I was like, I don't want you to go. But then I remember, I think towards the end, I said to you, I think you're supposed to do this. You know, I wasn't going to be a friend to be selfish and say, sorry, you can't go. I mean, I could still, express my hurt. I didn't feel safe for you. Because I was like, is she really done? Or is it out of sight, out of mind? But the moment he comes back in sight, she gonna go back.
Wow. Now look, y'all, this is real talk because I never knew this.
Yeah.
I never knew this because in my mind, I was done. When I finally found me again, like, what's that song by Michelle Williams, Believe in Me Again? Like, once I finally believed in me again, and I got back to the place, as she's saying in the song, get back to the place that I left long ago where no one can tell me what's impossible. I believe in me again. When I got to that place where I said, I'm tired. I am sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you will not put your hands on me again. I don't care. I'm done. And at that point, I was like, somebody gonna die tonight, and it's not gonna be me. And that relationship was over. I didn't care how many people he sent back trying to scare me. I was done. And I will never forget, he did come back. He came back one time and knocked on my door. That day, he was trying to intimidate me. And I was like, look, I hate your guts, so you need to leave. And he's like, I'm not leaving. I said, well, I will drive you wherever you need to go. Nobody knew that it was the middle of the night. I drove him somewhere in deep Lansing. He was like, well, are you scared of me? And I was like, no. He was like, well, what if I told you I had a gun? I was like, well, then I'm going to drive this car off the curb and we both die. Like, so I'm not going to die by myself. I told you that somebody going to die and it's not going to be me. So if we going to go off the curb. And so like I swerved the car, made it seem like I was going to go off the curb. And he was like, okay, cool. Like you are literally nuts. So let me go and I'm done, because it's about power and control. And so I went back home and I called you like, hey, I'm about to come over, not knowing what happened. Mm-hmm. And I was like, for me, at that point, I was done. No pass and go, no going back, nothing. Like when I find me again, I'm out. There's nothing you can say, nothing you can do, because I know my worth. Like you said, I was worth more than that. When I realized my worth, I was out. So I never thought of him again. Like I could care less if he fell off a cliff. I found out that he had got married or something and moved on. I didn't care. As long as that crazy fool was not beating me up, I did not care. I had to figure out how to focus on myself and rebuild my life.
And I think for me, being your friend, being your sister, I watched you roller coaster with your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think although verbally you were saying, this is how, this is where I'm at and all this, I watched you emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
Up and down. I mean, you stayed with me during the week, and so I watched those times. And that's why I talk about watch those nonverbals. Your nonverbals would tell me, is she there? Is she not there? Is she? So that's where I'm like, I didn't know. I mean, I'll say I was going to be there regardless. I was going to rub my mouth, but I was going to be there regardless.
Right.
And I think too, as a friend, to watch that,
mm-hmm.
I needed to see a shift in you, and I seen it once you left.
The Royal One podcast is sponsored by Royal One Enterprise. Royal One Enterprise is an empowerment company that utilizes life coaching, Bible teaching, speaking, and consulting to equip women with the confidence to embrace the royal woman within. For more information, visit my website at www.royal1enterprise.com. All right, guys, let's jump back into the conversation with me and Tia. That those who have been involved in a situation like this, you got to rebuild your whole life. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know what I like and I don't like, because what I did like, he didn't like. So I had to stop doing what I like so that I can please him, so he won't keep putting his hands on me. Mm-hmm. And he spoke some deadly things over my life. And this is something you didn't know. One of my friends back in Oregon actually had to free me. Although I left the relationship, and I say this all the time, although I was out of the relationship, mentally I wasn't. I still kept that fleece jacket. You know, the black fleece jacket that's purple on the inside. Mm-hmm. I kept that, and that's the jacket that I wore when I was covering up my all my bruises. I never put it on, but I kept it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I had to move, and she was helping me pack my apartment. And I was telling her the story of what happened. Like, I was like, oh, that's the jacket that I wore. She was like, what? I said, yeah, this is the jacket. She was like, why do you still have it? I was like, I don't know. That was my favorite jacket. Do you wear it? No, the zipper doesn't even work. Like, it was just my jacket. She was like, let's let it go. And do you know, two things happened. One, I almost cried because I'm like, how can I not let this go? Like, what do you mean? There's so many memories tied to this jacket. I can't let it go. And then it was like, no, it's time to let it go. And when we threw it in the garbage, a weight lifted off of my shoulders. It was a weight that lifted, that it was like no longer the shame holding me. So I couldn't write my book until I let go of that jacket. I couldn't let go of the shame of what happened. I was too afraid. I always tried to prove that I was enough. Like, I was still desperate at that point. Like, I had to prove him wrong of what he said. And so once I let go of the jacket, I let go of his words. He no longer had power over me in that way. And so I think for those who want to know, how do you help somebody? You need to help them by loving them, still telling them what they're worth, but then also going back through and seeing if they have anything that's still holding them to that past. Is it a picture? What is it? Because not only is it that thing is still attaching that person to that relationship, as much as you hate his guts, but yet I still, every time I see that jacket, I remember exactly what happened.
I think the other thing too is being okay to confront, because you can confront love, because I think about even once you left and went to Portland, and we would have conversations, whether it's because you were in a relationship or whatever, you did still have that mentality about yourself. I will say I seen it lighten up when you went to Portland. And that's another reason why I said I didn't know if it was officially over till you left. I think you physically had to leave the state. And I watched it shift, but you would tell me these things like, well, this about me and this about me. And I would literally say, well, who said that?
And I couldn't tell you he said it, but he said it.
Yeah.
Somebody said.
Who said that? And it was funny because I think that was your moment of pause. Because you would kind of sit there and then you like, that's not true. And I'm like, no. Because the thing about it is I knew who said it. without saying to you, I knew who said it. You know, it's like the people who say they said, because it's either somebody said it or you saying it to yourself, but you try to put it off on somebody else. And so, you know, I always feel like I confronted you with love. You know what I mean? Because I would say, who is that? Who said that? Where did that come from? Tell me the root of where that came from. I always remember you would kind of, well, T, look.
Because that's what I'm about to keep it real. When I say, look, it's over. I'm about to tell the truth. No lies is going to be told from this point forward. But here's the thing, y'all. T, as a therapist, would never, ever sit in that seat with me unless it was these moments. After this, she'd be like, okay, talk yourself through it. No, I'm not about to be your counselor today. I'm not going to do that. So you can talk yourself through this. I'm listening. But in these moments, y'all don't understand how much I love Tia. Like, I love her. She has seen me through the worst of the worst and the best of the best. And to watch her really just help me get my life back together. Like, I am so grateful. I am so grateful because when you have people in your life that just love you for you, like they ain't asking for no money. They just asking for your time and your friendship and your authenticity. And like, I'm not going to let you not be great because I see the greatness on the inside of you and I need you to fight for you. I need you to love you more than anything else. And it was just like, I literally had to put myself back together. And I never understood why until I had to go on that journey of self-discovery that I talk about in Rejected to Accept It, how I had to learn to love myself. And it was hard. And I was late 20s at the time when I started the process of learning to love myself. It wasn't right away that I started it. Okay, let's unpack all of these issues. Let's get to the root of it. And then why don't you love yourself? Why did you let yourself get here? What caused you to stay? And so it was facing me, but giving myself enough grace and love and kindness to say, you know what? It's all right. And I think the other thing is like, you don't need to condemn them. No. You don't need to, why you do that? You so dumb. You know better than that. They already know that they messed up. They already know.
But I think that's what that person's saying.
Yes.
That's what the person is saying to them. So all you're doing is actually you're validating the abuser by saying that.
Yep. I talked to Tone and he was like, what did you eat? I'm like, oh, a tomato and some popcorn. Or I didn't eat today or something I said. He told Quay called my mom and said, something's wrong with Sandra. You need to go check her out because she only eating the popcorn and the tomato. Like something is not right. And my mom got there and she saw me. I was at a really small size and my mom, she stayed the whole week, but she said 2 things to me that I will never forget. Love does not hurt. And if you feel unsafe in your own house, that's a problem. She stayed for the next week and she would just wake up. You know, my mom is praying now. She ain't play that mess. 5 a.m., got that little oily cross right on my head, lay that hand and pray over me every single day. She would drive back to Battle Creek to go to work, come back to East Lansing, and she just prayed. And she's never, even to this day, you, my family, everybody that's close to me who knew about the situation, I have never, ever, ever felt an ounce of shame or judgment or condemnation. None of that. None of that. I have never felt it. And when we talk about it, do a very delicate dance to keep me safe. It's a very delicate dance. And I'm so grateful for that because a lot of people, their family isn't as loving.
Yeah.
And isn't as caring and kind that I share the story because I told them like, hey, because most of them didn't really know everything that happened. And so I said, well, I'm about to write this book. When they start reading what happened, everything started making sense. Why I love God the way I love him now, because I had nothing left. I had nothing left. And it wasn't like, how did I get here? I talked about it in the last podcast. Like, hey, I had some unmet childhood needs. I had low self-esteem. I had a fix-it mentality. I liked the unavailable man. I wanted somebody who never wanted me. And I wanted to prove that I was enough, that I was going to work so hard to fix them, to be the man that I wanted them to be. And I had trauma in my own life. And I was a ball of brokenness, hoping that somebody would come and save me. And he saw the prime target to abuse. But once I realized like it is time for me to let go of this, like you have to love yourself more than the ideas in your mind. I only stayed in that relationship to prove to myself that I could actually have one, not realizing that there was lines of people that wanted to date me, but the negative narrative that was in my mind was that I was never enough. So that if I didn't give my body, if I didn't give my everything that I had, then you wouldn't want me. And that's the thing, is that you have to start at that point of who are you? Because a man will never give you the value that you need. Welcome back, guys. You know what time it is. I know you have all enjoyed this conversation, and we still have so much to discuss. So we're going to continue this on next week's episode. So I want to say thank you for joining me for the 6th episode of the Royal One podcast. And I look forward to providing you more encouraging content that empowers you to discover your purpose, embrace your identity, and engage faith tenaciously. If you have any questions that you would like answered on the show about purpose, faith, relationships, or anything in general, or domestic violence, email me at info@lasandrabarnes.com to ask your question. If you want to book a one-on-one coaching session with me, you can. Click the link in the show notes to schedule a session. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment on the podcast. You can follow me on social media at MissRoyalty143 on Instagram and Twitter, and Dr. Lysandra Barnes on Facebook. And remember, you can also purchase a copy of Rejected to Accepted online. Click the link in the show notes. You've been listening to the Royal One podcast, where I empower women the royal way. This is Dr. Barnes signing off.